This is further to articulate what I'm trying to get at about a a certain peculiar distinction that is not merely niche. In other words, it doesn't merely describe um, one or two people. It's not like it's not like just me describing me and generalizing and projecting that, well, there's tons of people like me. Because why do I say this? Well, I've had plenty of teachers in the United States who exemplify my theory. Many, many. I mean, like tens and tens and tens. And around those teachers, in various contexts, mainly university related academia, philosophy, comparative literature, but also mystical work groups from before, Eastern religion, and splinter sects, cults, things, E.J. Gold, Jan Cox, Rajneesh, these kinds of things. California New Thought movement. That's 1960s, and in general, a certain kind of, and might I add, I am a son of California. I am a son of a 1960s California proto-hippie, my mother. She was a little bit more experimental than the hippie movement, because the hippie movement was actually quite uniform. And my mother is a lot more eclectic, but she is cut from the cloth. Mystical work groups, psychoanalysis, she was there, and she's been there her whole life. And so what happens when you have a child and you raise them in your religion? Your child then is raised in your religion. Now, it's just a bit odd, because if you talk to my mother about her religion, she'll talk about her Protestant roots, and she'll talk about a lack, maybe, of religion. But I think that that's an indicator, a telltale sign of certain threads of spiritual thought up until now have been referred to roughly as spiritual but not religious. This is misleading, because it's religious. Religious is religious. Quite often, and you will find, we all know, plenty people who consider themselves spiritual but not religious actually seem to behave in a much more consistently and obviously religious way than many people who consider themselves religious but not spiritual. Consider the distinction between religious belief and religious reasoning. Now, I also am thinking in terms of religious knowledge, and they should be kept separate, I suppose, because knowledge indicates a kind of positive reservoir of facts or apprehensions or Something related to sets of propositions, that's for sure. Religious knowledge. If you have religious knowledge, you're able to produce propositions that are either generated from some particular system of thinking or a combination of systems of thinking, and then can be demonstrated in its genealogical bearing, its genealogical relation to the system. Everything can be demonstrated formally in language. So, to my mind, the notion of religious knowledge or religious understanding has to do quite a bit to do with language, and concepts. It's a philosophical question, the relation exactly between language and concepts, where the correlations are and where the asymmetries are. But what I'm getting at is that this has little to do with religious belief, because you can have a fuck ton, to use a technical term, of religious knowledge, and you can be bereft of belief. I know plenty of atheists who fit that description exactly. I suppose I'm one of them. I could be described as one of them. I hesitate because can't say that I'm certain about the concept of belief any more than I am certain about belief itself, or have belief or don't. It's hard to get a philosopher to believe in anything because immediately we're destroying the belief. So I think for a philosopher, religion primarily is a question of knowledge. And I'm not sure that it's any less or more significant. It's just different. But what is significant is the fact that there are plenty of atheists who fit this description, who will not be involved in religion for moral reasons, ostensibly for epistemological or logical reasons. Because you're a bit of a fraud if you're an atheist and you go on Sunday to a Baptist church to sing. No, you're not. Well, that's what I'm trying to get at right now. No, you're not. Because as it turns out, philosophical atheists still have potentially a lot of religious knowledge. And therefore, this, I think, would point us back in the direction of religion to explain exactly how the ranking goes. What is the perspective of the given religion of the difference between belief and knowledge pertaining to itself? Certainly, if you're trying to transmit a mass message, it's much more difficult for it to be grounded in knowledge because it involves thoughts and it involves thinking. Belief is just rule following. It doesn't matter if you're following the rule of God or the rule of your father or the rule of the president. Belief is just rule following. You tell me the rule and I execute it. But thinking is not rule following. Quite often, thinking is rule breaking. Now, rule breaking that's grounded in thinking is perfectly dignified of a human. That's what conscientious objective is. I can't speak. Conscientious objection is rule breaking that's grounded in thinking. And so if I suggest that the conscientious objection of, say, a civil rights leader, the conscientious objection of a civil rights leader is grounded in knowledge. It may be grounded in belief, but if you pay attention to the teaching of nonviolence, whether Gandhi, Ahimsa, Dr. King, belief almost might be pushed to the side. Now, I'm sure there are plenty of descriptions such that you have to believe that you can stand and not physically fight back and take a beating and get arrested and thrown in jail and still resist. You have to believe that. Well, this is a matter of choosing words in particular ways, I suppose. But see, if that were my behavior, and I truly don't know how I would behave in the situation. I mean, I might curl up in a ball and start crying. There's no way to know. I hope I would do what I believe is dignified. To stand against force with words, nonviolently. This is something that now all you religious scholars in the United States, I don't know how many of you there are. I bet there's about 1,000 like really serious religious scholars. And there's plenty of you who are atheists. And in fact, whoever's watching this right now, chances are it's much more likely that you're an atheist. But let's guess, of the people who are watching this right now, you're all very handpicked. And, if I've sent this to you, it means that I follow your work. If you're listening to this, it's maybe 99%, let's say 95%, or even 90%, likely that you're an atheist. And it also might be likely, 90% likely, that you know more about religion than I do. I know a little bit. But I know enough that without hesitation, I'd call myself a man of religion, a man whose life is dedicated to religion, but more specifically to religious thinking and to religious knowledge. So when I refer to religious reasoning, what I'm referring to is the morality of a religious scholar who may be an atheist, but is called now to act.